Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Born, and I am so excited. We are back. So, last time we talked about chapter 1 of my book, Set It on Fire. And today on the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast, we are going to talk about chapter 2. And I'm so excited because I have Moriah Hidden back. She's going to interview me, and she is my behind the scenes partner. She helps me with so many things in my business. Honestly, I could not have survived over the last several months without her. So I'm so excited to have her back to spend some time with me today. Welcome to the podcast, Moriah.
Thank you, Natalie, and hello, everyone, again. I'm excited to continue this conversation, dive into chapter 2, and really unpack more ideas around innovation.
I was laughing with you maybe before the podcast started about chapter 2's title because I think it's kind of funny. It's called Get Out of My Sandbox, right? And I feel like sometimes in corporate environments I've worked in, that's how people feel about innovation. It's their sandbox and you got to get out of it.
100%. And I think the whole aspect of chapter 2 really goes to the sandbox and what is the sandbox. And it's the first step before you can even have ideas around innovation. So, can you explain a little bit about what the sandbox is?
Well, yeah. So I think when we think about maybe we can think about our own companies or our own workplaces or wherever we work. Oftentimes, there might be somebody that's kind of relegated as the person who owns innovation. Maybe it's the chief technology officer. Maybe it's a certain department. Maybe it's a group of people who are really creative and they're like known as the idea people. And so it just feels like no one else is really allowed to have ideas but the select group. And so for me, when I think about those sandboxes, a lot of times those sandboxes create silos. And so when other people in other areas of the business try to have ideas, oftentimes it's met with a little bit of resistance. So why I love this chapter is because it's kind of the resistance chapter. It's like, how do we start to build a culture where we move past resistance and start to move into action and have the whole organization see themselves as innovators, not just a select group of people.
Yeah, that's good. And the key word is teamwork. And in an organization, not just having the one department that does everything, the creative department that does everything, the innovation and ideas can really come from every department. And then also teamworking across the departments. You said in your book that it's not independent, it's interdependent. And I love that because it's not a sandbox where you have to get out. It's a sandbox that everyone can play in. So I think that's awesome. You talk about in chapter 1 internally and externally ideas and how you can get ideas both ways. So my question are what are key factors that determine when to look internally versus externally for ideas, and how can organizations effectively balance both approaches to drive innovation?
Yeah, so something I talked about a lot in this chapter is that I actually had we had our CEO come to us. It was in the downturn of the economy back in 2009, which Mariah, I don't know what you were doing in 2009, but I bet you were not working.
It was 10.
Yeah, there we go. So, around that time, we had a financial crisis, and literally, we were laying people off. At the time, I worked for a job board, and there's nothing more depressing than opening a job board and there's no jobs on the job
Mm.
board. Like, I'd never seen anything like that. And so we were all afraid, and a lot of people in our company were being laid off and losing their job. But our CEO did something really cool. He came to us as a group and he said, we need to create 2 new innovative products every year. And honestly, that felt really insurmountable because we didn't have all of the systems and the processes in the place to do that, but we started to dream. And so we started to say, I bet there's ideas internally that people have that they just haven't shared because there's no mechanism for them to do it. And then we also said, I bet externally our customers, maybe they have ideas they want to share, or maybe we can take some of these ideas we have and bring them to the customer. And so we started to spin up different ways people could create ideas and create innovation through the organization. And so we had everything from hackathons where developers would stay up all night developing a new tool. And then, they're armed with like Red Bull and Mountain Dew and pizza, all the healthy things that help you innovate. And the next morning they're actually pitching their idea because they built it. They built a prototype, which imagine that type of rapid development where you just say in 24 hours, here it is. And so we just started breaking down silos and thinking differently about how we wanted to innovate. And that just created the spark in our organization where we had multiple ways, multiple competitions, all these different ways people could innovate. And it felt like we were finally moving forward and creating a mechanism that was fun to get our ideas out there.
That's good. I like how you said in your book internally that collaboration mindset. And if you get people in the beginning stages, they feel like they're a part of that team and they feel like they're a part of the progress to innovate. And so I think it's really cool. You also mentioned that I kind of want you to talk a little bit more about is there are some organizations and leaderships that have a no culture. And a lot of times, like we talked last week about the psychological health of an organization and being confident enough to ask questions and have ideas. How would you say, you talk about landmines, how would you say that when they have a culture of no, to still keep pursuing that and even having the benefit of them saying no?
So some of this could be generational. Like I think about, certain environments were kind of command and control is what they were called. So especially as you go to like the 80s, it was like you had a one person and everyone kind of reported up to that person. And the organization was kind of stacked around this one person getting to say yes or no. And while that felt probably really great for that person because they were in control of everything, what it essentially did is it does not democratize innovation and it does not democratize thinking. So, pretty much what would happen is if I want to make a decision, I've got to run that up the chain. I don't know, 30 days, maybe it'll come back to me with what the decision is, and then we do it again. And when you have that no culture, you kind of build a structure where one person can say yes or no to anything. But where we see so many organizations have moved to over the years is this kind of more of an ecosystem. So if I give you the vision, the values, and the goals of the organization, I now trust you, I deputize you to be intelligent, to critically think, and make good decisions on behalf of the company. Now, I still hold you accountable
Mhm.
if you make a bad decision, we still talk through it, we still work through it and figure out what would you have done differently next time, so you're not off the hook. But I also trust that I'm hiring smarter people than me. I'm trusting that because they're smarter than me, and they understand the values of the organization, they can make good decisions. And when they don't make good decisions, we bring them back to the values to have a good conversation. But that no culture, that can't, it actually stifles, kills innovation. It stops innovation in its tracks. And so what I like better than, "Oh, we've tried that before," or, "No, we can't do that," is what would be true to make this successful? What would be true to make this work? So when we use that type of language, we actually open people's thinking. When we say, "No, we can't," or, "We've tried that before," we actually close people's thinking. And what happens psychologically is they go into fight or flight. So now it's like, okay, these people don't believe in my ideas. They don't trust my ideas. They don't want my ideas. So why am I bothering? And that's a way that we shut down cultures, people, and organizations. But when we ask people, what would need to be true for that to work, or what would need to be true for that to be successful, we actually open people's mind to think bigger and broader and actually bring a really powerful perspective to the table. So no culture no cultures are killers for success when we want to innovate.
I love that. I think it's so important to have not a no culture, but also to have the no culture. I think I was thinking while you were talking about how if you have an idea and you bring it to your leadership team and you're scared of the no culture, kind of thinking about what could make it true and doing that work yourself. And now you're not just coming with an idea, you're coming with a plan that you could see work or not work, but be able to at least have some kind of backbone in the progress that you actually put in some work and that trust that you said of carrying those values and the culture to have more of an honest conversation. It kind of is like when you were a kid and you wanted to go hang out with your friend. You're cleaning your room first, you're doing all these things, and then you go and you're like, "Hey,
Right.
did all of this, and it's kind of, you see the work that they put in. So I think that's
Wow.
helpful.
I really love that you said that because I think that is so important. Like, we're not just lobbing ideas over the wall and expecting someone else to do the work. I remember I was in this business plan competition at this company I mentioned, and the person that won the entire competition, he didn't just say, "Here's my prototype." He actually was like, "Here's 5 signed contracts." I was like, "Oh, he's won the whole competition." Like, he went and got 5 signed contracts to say, like, not only do people want this, but they're willing to buy it right now. So I think you're right. The more legwork you can do, the better your idea will actually land in the organization. So it's one thing to say I have a cool idea. It's another thing to say I talked to 5 customers and 4 of them said they buy it right now. Like,
Right.
that's a whole nother lane that you're living in, which I love that you mentioned that.
Talking about customers, in your book, you shared a story about how you were talking to a customer and your heart sank right when she was like, "This is not it." Can you talk a little bit about that process of like, what values did you carry through that process? The humility that you had to have to understand that maybe the product wasn't right for everyone, and being able to listen to the customer, hear her out, and then what that process kind of looked like?
You know, it's interesting. I feel like this is where a lot of, especially small business owners, get it wrong, is they go out and spend a year on their idea and they don't talk to anyone. And then they've spent all their hard-earned money on this idea that actually nobody wants. And if you're a year in, you almost can't hear, "I don't want this," or "I don't like this," or "This isn't good." And so what I've encouraged in my book, and today with AI, like, the ability to do this is so easy. Like, go on and create a prototype. Create what you're thinking, show them how it functions and works without spending, months or years on something. We can now with AI, we can spend hours or days on something, and then we can instantly show it to several people and get their yes or no. And to me, that yes or no is so powerful. And yes, it hurts when someone's like, "I do not like this and I will not use this and I think it's really bad." But it's actually that fuels us to go back and build the thing that we really need to build so that we can be successful. What I loved about this client is she said, "If you will build the thing I want, I will actually pay for it now." And so for my ability to go back to my leadership team and say, "Hey, we were off for sure." And especially as the product development person at the time, I was off. I was building it in the wrong direction. However, if we will configure it like this, and if I can go talk to 5 other clients and they'll also agree that if it's configured like this, they'll buy it, then I think we have a winner. So a lot of what I did in my career in product development is I would partner with salespeople who were really great and open to innovation and ideas, and I would ask them if I could tag along. So I'm like, "Tell me the 5 customers you're going to see this week, and can I go with you on 3 of those trips?" And just talk to the customers about this idea at the end of whatever you're talking to them about. And the people that would say yes became kind of my partners in crime, and we would go have these great conversations with customers, and we would bring all this back from the field, and it was always more powerful when the information came back from the field of, "People are really excited about this product. So let's go build it because we have the contracts in our hand." And so that's really what we're looking for is people who will give us the honest truth so that we can actually build something that will help them.
Yeah, that's really good. You say to be okay with feedback because feedback is a gift. And I think that's so important and crucial. And to really have the confidence that failure is okay. Like, we are all going to fail. We talked about it last time. We're all going to fail. But being able to take one step in front of the next is will catapult you.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So when it comes to fostering innovation, what role does leadership play in encouraging collaboration across departments or teams? Are there specific actions or initiatives that leaders can take to make collaboration more seamless and productive?
Let's talk about silos. Let me just welcome you to my TED Talk because I really get frustrated when I go into organizations and I see silos. I can remember specifically, I was onboarded to this one organization and each department was using their own project management tool. And the company wasn't that big. And I thought, wow, we're missing an opportunity to see across, like to be able to see from one department to another what people are working on. And when we think about silos, silos are very disappointing because they do a couple things. I talk about this in my book. They waste talent, they waste time, they definitely waste money. Think about paying for 4 or 5 different tools that do the exact same thing. They waste energy and effort. They destroy morale because, oh my gosh, I'm working on the same thing you're working on, but nobody communicated. And now I'm frustrated because I wasted, 5 weeks working on the same thing you were working on. They also make us feel like a us versus them. So when there's a silo in place, now I feel like you're my enemy and I have to beat you. What is that? Especially when we should be working towards the same goals. And then ultimately with silos end up creating confusion with the customer. So like, let's think about this for a second. Have you ever called customer service and they're like, "Oh, that's not my department, it's their department." And then you call into the other department, like, "That's not my department, that's their."
Right.
It's now repeated your issue 4 times and you still don't have a solution. The customer does not care whose department it is. They want their issue solved and they're trusting your business to solve it when they pick up the phone and call. And so when we look at silos, I can't find a lot of really great things about silos. I do know that silos are natural, they're gonna happen in organizations. However, our goal should be to move as quickly and as fast as we can to kill silos because they kill communication, they kill collaboration, and they don't enable us to actually bring our resources together. What we do in a silo is we actually hoard our resources. We keep them to ourselves and we don't share them. And so that is very frustrating part of silos. As you can tell, I am not a fan of silos. And so silos actually really hurt the goals of the organization and they force us to hoard money and resources and time and people. And instead of sharing things as we should be doing in a business and organization, we actually hoard. And so that is not a successful method for collaboration and innovation.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that having fun at work is not wrong either. Like, I'm sitting here being like, team building and all these things really bring teams together and it makes it fun. And not only it makes it fun, but you now get coworkers that are friends that you're bouncing ideas off of each other, you're trusting one another, you're being able to kind of fix problems before they even happen. Like, "Oh, you're working on that? That's funny. I'm working on that. So let's kind of go back to the drawing board and see how we can best result in this." So I think that's really good. So when organizations have silos, how can leaders kind of drop those barriers and encourage teamwork and collaboration with different departments? And what if some departments are working on the same thing? What would you say are good first steps to kind of drop those barriers and take the next step?
Yeah, I think there's so much power in working open. Like, for example, I had a leader who in this organization I mentioned where there was 4 different project management, tools, and I said, "Hey, would you be willing to look at us coming together and combining tools?" And, they said, "No." And I said, "Well, would you be interested in us at least sharing, at least initially, logins so that I can let you log into my project management dashboard, you can see what we're working on and vice versa?" And they said, "No, but you can come stand over my shoulder and look at the projects we're working on." To which I said, "No, thank you. I will not be, coming into your office and standing over your shoulder to look at the projects you're working on." And so I realized that, very early on that either, this person was just unwilling to take down the silo or something more insidious might have been going on there because they were unwilling to share information. But I think that's step 1 is we have to get to a point where we work open, where we're not afraid to share with people what we're working on and why. And then in organizations that I've been in, we actually had meetings, whether it was, might be once every 2 weeks or once a month, where we just shared, "Hey, these are the top 3 projects I'm working on. Here's my project dashboard. Here's how they're going. This one's going amazing. This one's going not so great. And actually, so and so, I could use your help or your insight or your vision or wisdom on this particular project. And here's why." And so when we're willing to work open, I think we're able to be so much more successful with the projects we're working on and with what we're trying to accomplish. And that is just a form of what we kind of touched on last time, which was psychological safety, right? When that's built into an organization, we openly share what we're working on and vice versa. And it actually makes us better and we can help one another out and grow.
I love in your book you talk about Google's Project Aristotle, which I would love to hear more about, but basically they set out to answer what makes a team truly effective by studying over 180 teams, emotional intelligence, team dynamics, all of that. But they came up with 5 attributes that drive success. dependability, structure and clarity, meaning of work, impact of work, and psychological safety. So, can you kind of go into what that project was all about, but how can leaders address these gaps if they're missing any of those attributes in going forward?
Yeah, so I love this study. I mean, a lot of people have read about this study, but what I think is really cool about this study is it really leans into why innovation matters and why it works in organizations and what makes it fail. And it really came down to a couple things. I mean, they actually had set out to study something completely different. I don't believe they were trying to study teaming, but then they just realized after talking to so many teams, they said, wow, these teams are stellar. And here are some of the insights. But here's the truth, like, we know teaming is hard because of people's ego and because of competition and because of all these other reasons, but they were actually trying to study what makes a great manager, and that morphed into actually what makes a great team. And so what they realized, and you mentioned those 5: dependability, structure, clarity, meaning of work, impact of work, and then psychological safety. They were all about different dynamics that actually made people feel safe. It was different dynamics that made navigating roadblocks and barriers really easy because of the skill sets they had built. And then there were certain personality traits that really worked well together. And then this last piece, which is so important in teams, emotional intelligence, right? If someone has the ability to read the room, and if I'm even able to read, like, oh no, I just offended you or I stepped on your toes, let me slow down and let's talk about what I just did. The emotional intelligence to even realize that in the first place. So, dependability. Can I count on you? This is one of the most important questions that people ask when they get into a team. Are you going to do what you say you're going to do? Are you going to show up, or do you always just leave me on a lurch, right? Are you going to take responsibility for what you're supposed to do on this project? And are you going to acknowledge the fact that, hey, while we're not perfect, our communication ability can really drive through some of that imperfection so that we can get to a good place. I think people don't realize the second one, which is structure and clarity. Are the goals of my team clear? I don't know about you, but have you ever been on a team where you had no clue why the team was assembled, what we were doing, why are we here, when is this going to be over, where is this bus taking us? People need to know that. And when we either hide that information or we're not clear, it frustrates people. People need to come onto a team. They need to understand their role. They need to understand their peers' roles, and they need to understand how they fit into the larger ecosystem. And when they don't understand that, and when they don't have clear performance objectives, it's almost impossible for them to be successful. Meaning of work. Oh, I love this one because it's like, are we working on things that matter to us? Am I working on something and I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm really going to make a difference? Let's think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm taking everybody back to Psychology 101 whenever they took that course. If somebody's not able to support their family, they're not thinking about how to innovate. So there's just basic building blocks. And so if someone on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is struggling, maybe they're struggling because they're not being paid enough, maybe they're struggling because they don't know how to make ends meet, then they're not going to be bringing their best to the table. So we need to address even how we pay people if we are asking them to be on a team and innovate. We've got to make sure that they can cover the basics of what life looks like in order to be successful. Let's talk about impact of work. Do we believe that our work matters to others? So that's really what this one is asking. Like, am I working on something that's going to be tossed aside? Or is this going to make a big splash in the market? I'm really excited about the work that I'm getting to do. That's what people want to know. Like, does the work that I'm doing make a difference and does it matter? Is there a personal impact? And then the last one I want to talk about is psychological safety. And this is one that we've talked about before, but I mean, we could talk about it in every episode because it's that important. If somebody feels unsafe, if they feel like they're in a toxic relationship at work, maybe the environment, if they feel that the team is unsafe or it breeds instability, if you can't take a risk or you can't innovate, if you're afraid of being yelled at work, let's just talk about that one, then oftentimes you will not be able to provide your best. And it's not because you're trying to hold back, and it's not because you're not trying to. It's because you're literally put into a state of fight or flight. And in a state of fight or flight, I don't know if you've ever been in a state of fight or flight. I remember I got attacked by a couple dogs in my neighborhood, and I was literally kicking and screaming and yelling. And if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Natalie, let's innovate," I mean, I would look at them like they were crazy, right? But sometimes that's the environment we're in at work where it's like a lot of infighting and frustration, and this person's toxic and that person's not helpful and this person's trying to block you over here. That's not an innovative environment. So until those behaviors are fixed, people really can't bring their best self to the table. So those 5 attributes, while I was a little long-winded, I think they're so important to actually study. If you've ever heard of the study, the Project Aristotle, I would have your team sit down and look at it together because this is the power of teams. And when we don't have these layers involved, we honestly can't have a successful and innovative team. So we've got to start there.
Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners about chapter 2 or anything that we've discussed today?
One of the things I would say is that, this I hope is a reflective episode for you to think about your own culture. Think about these 5 principles, think about how your organization operates and what's maybe even just one area you'd like to improve. Do you want to improve dependability? Do we want to improve meaning of work or impact of work or potentially psychological safety? So maybe just take a minute and think about one area that you could change or impact in the world around you.
I love that. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. Natalie, it's been great diving into these innovation conversations. And as we wrap up, I know our listeners would love to stay connected and keep learning. So can you share where they can find you and your work?
Absolutely. You can find me at Innovation Meets Leadership on all the different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Feel free to go there and check us out. And then you can find this book at setitonfire.co. Moriah, thank you so much for interviewing me. This has been fun. To our listeners, I want to thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership. And visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.
Hey, my new book is out, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. Click on the link to learn more. And don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.